want to know why you believe the Kalam argument's weak.
Okay, sure.
Why is
Okay, yeah. So, right, the first statement is it's a misuse of modern science. Okay.
This is the first time in Speaker's Corner, isn't it?
So what the claim made by the Kalam argument, or the people that expound the Kalam argument, is that modern Big Bang cosmology proves that there's a beginning to the universe. But that's false, okay? That is not correct. It is based on theorems in physics, which are very elegant mathematical theorems, but what's now been shown is that the assumptions of those theorems are not to be trusted. So what happened was, we saw that there's an expansion of the universe. You wind the clock back, it's getting denser and denser and denser. There are theorems in general relativity. They're called Penrose-Hawking singularity theorems. And what they show is that assuming certain things, then the density of the universe will become infinite in a finite amount of time. And not just the density, but also the pressure, the curvature, and the temperature all become infinity. Therefore, you cannot continue the evolution of the universe before the Big Bang, and therefore the Big Bang is the beginning of time. Right? So that's what these theorems, these Penrose-Hawking theorems state.
Theories.
Yes, right? Okay, yeah, well, we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that.
You're not going to stand like that for long, so sit down.
Yeah, sit down. Right, so as what's your name? Emmanuel correctly states, there are actually several assumptions of these theorems. Yeah. And one of the biggest ones is that it doesn't include the effect of quantum mechanics. Okay? Quantum mechanics is the science that describes subatomic particles. Okay, now for the most part, certainly for big things like planets and galaxies and superclusters of galaxies, you don't need quantum mechanics. You only need a classical theory, i.e. general relativity, Einstein's theory of relativity, right? So you don't need quantum mechanics. However, if the Big Bang theory is true, the entire observable universe becomes smaller than an atom, and then you do need quantum mechanics. And these singularity theorems don't include quantum effects. So what we would need to see if those theorems are really true, to see if the Big Bang really was the beginning, is you would need what we call a quantum theory of gravity. Okay? So string theory is one example, but there are others. There's another one called loop quantum gravity.
Quantum, yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of heard of the string theory.
Yeah, string theory is the most famous, but it's not the only one, right? I've actually made films with the guy that invented string theory and the guy that invented the rival theory called loop quantum gravity. Now what's interesting, and there's another one called Harjava-Lifshitz gravity. Now what's interesting is that all people have tried to develop these theories and see if the Big Bang is really the beginning of time or not. And what they found is, in these theories, it appears that the Big Bang is not the beginning of time.
No.
That the universe existed before the Big Bang.
Okay.
Okay.
This is what they come with now.
Effect.
Yes.
So this is but all that time they've been believing that.
Believe what?
They're believing that the universe came into.
Yeah. A lot of people did believe that.
Okay. Now that has changed.
Yes.
And that will change again.
Maybe.
And it will always change.
Well, I wouldn't say it would always change.
No,
We'll get to his. No, hang on.
Yeah.
What would happen when we hope is that we'll get to a point where our theoretical description of the early universe will have evidence that is so strong that we will be confident in it.
So what would that evidence be? Like that
I'll give you an example.
No,
not necessarily. It may be eternal. Who knows?
No. But how? Where is your evidence that's eternal? Infinite.
I say we don't know at the moment. So at the moment, what we can say with confidence, we can trace the evolution of the universe back in time to about at least 1 second after the Big Bang.
Okay.
As we get closer, less than a second, things are less certain. Okay. So we haven't validated necessarily what happened, at the Big Bang itself. So we don't know what happened there.
Exactly.
However,
but the Kalam argument says that they say you don't. You say you don't know.
Correct.
The Kalam argument actually says that. So I'm just trying to find out what do you mean it's weak because let's open the verse. What verse is it?
In chapter 52, verse 35.
Chapter what?
52.
I do make films with professional cosmologists.
Like Stephen Hawking and these guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've made films with a lot of the scientists that a lot of the
so
people.
You're one of their students, in there, you can say in that sense.
Yeah. You're in the field.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just because it's interesting, we're focusing on the Big Bang. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. You could do that. I mean, I'm not sitting here and saying that it's a tenet. You have to understand our position first of all, right?
Sure.
As Muslims, first of all, we're not compelled to believe in all the formulations of the Kalam Cosmological argument.
Yeah, I understand.
First of all, like the Kalam Cosmological arguments from a philosophical perspective,
it
takes different forms.
Yes.
the most simplistic one, which is being popularized nowadays, is the one to be found in Ghazali's book Tafahat al-Falasifa, which is a book which is an argument that's popularized by the likes of William Lane Craig, or on a popular level.
Yes.
There are other such arguments like this, but Thomas Aquinas has like a 5 or 6 stage process, and then he goes to like the unmoved mover and stuff. So we're not saying that the Quran endorses all of that.
No, I know.
We can't say that.
I know that, but certain Muslims do.
Do you get it?
Right.
So I'm saying that sort of just as a preamble here, as an important point to start, or a caveat. That even if we say, okay, look, you've completely. I'm not saying this is possible. I don't think you could be like that, or even prove that it is possible. Well, let's just for the sake of argument, say if the time came where you say, okay, I can completely dismantle the Kalam Cosmological argument, it doesn't follow that then you have disproven God.
No.
Okay,
I wouldn't
you
say
get
that.
it.
I agree with that. I
Point.
totally agree with that.
Second point is I wanted
totally
to ask you now, because you're kind of a specialist in this field. Could you tell us the significance of the second law of thermodynamics?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. As it applies to this issue.
As it applies to this discussion.
Okay, so the claim has been made that that even if you forget about the Big Bang, the second law of thermodynamics proves that the universe is not eternal into the past. And that claim
Why is it what? Could you explain?
Okay, so sure, I can explain what the reasoning is.
Yes.
So the reasoning is that entropy is increasing into the future, and you will get to a point where there's a maximum entropy.
Explain to them what entropy is.
So entropy, so there's a rough definition of entropy, which is basically disorder, but that's not the precise definition of entropy that scientists generally use. The very precise definition is it's the number of microstates that you count with a given macrostate. So let me try and explain what I mean by that, because that may not be apparent what I mean. So imagine you have, I'll try and give an example, right? Imagine you build a sand castle, okay? There's only one way, let's say, that you can arrange all the sand to make the castle, yeah? And now imagine you have just a pile of sand. You could rearrange the bits of sand in many different ways and still get a pile of sand. But there's less ways that you can rearrange the sand and get a sand castle.
Less ways.
So we would say that the sand castle is low entropy and the mound of sand is high entropy. It's not exactly that it's disorganized, although people often use roughly it is that, but it's not precisely that, because there are actually exceptions where you can be more organized and high entropy.
That's right.
But generally speaking, the specific definition is the number, therefore, of microstates that you count for a given macrostate. Okay, so the idea is that entropy is increasing into the future, and it will get to this point where there'll be some maximal entropy, where there'll be no usable energy in the universe.
What would happen?
So in that sense, the universe would just be a very cold, diffuse gas. And it wouldn't have any usable energy.
Okay? So how does this apply?
So how does that apply to the Kalam? So the argument that's been made is, and therefore we can't have an infinite past, because we would have got to that point, and since we're not at that point, then the past must be finite. Now the reason that this argument, there's a number of reasons why this argument is invalid. Okay?
But then you've got to qualify that it's invalid in your opinion.
Okay, it's not just my opinion, it's in the opinion of many of the people, the scientists, that have been quoted by the defenders of the Kalam.
That's fine. There's people.
So let me just give you the context. No, don't take my word for it. I've made films with the very scientists that have been quoted by the people who are the top scientists in the field, that have been quoted by people like William Lane Craig. So Alan Guth and Roger Penrose are two of the key scientists here, right? And both of them agree that the universe is probably eternally into the past, and they've been misquoted when it comes to entropy. Okay?
No, you're saying they've been misquoted by William Lane Craig,
and others. He's not the only one who's made this argument.
So what we're saying, just to qualify,
I know you're not necessarily.
There's no consensus in the scientific community, just to be clear. That basically
that entropy implies the beginning of the universe. Let me try and explain why, because so far I've only explained why it does. So let's try and explain why it doesn't.
Go on.
Okay. So first off, it's not. This is the argument made. There are different arguments about this. So there's not a consensus about this.
Of course
so there are different arguments. We don't know what the right answer is. So what Alan Guth has suggested is that the maximum entropy of the universe could be infinite. In which case,
where's the evidence for that?
hang on, I'll explain. Hang on one sec, right? So So if it's infinite, then you'll never get to the maximal entropy state. Yeah, and in a multiverse, that would be the case. Yeah, because although
in
a
a
pocket,
multiverse.
yes,
But here now because to be fair here.
yeah,
Phil.
Phil, yes.
Sorry, we can't jump from one speculation to another. Because
with gravity we can.
Okay, so when you say speculation, exactly what do you mean by speculation?
No, I'm saying with gravity, gravitons are a different dimension.
Just one second. What I'm saying is that.
Speak a bit louder, buddy.
Sorry, bro. And what I'm saying is that generally now you've mentioned the multiverse.
Yes.
Now I have to be honest with you here. We can't take that as we can't run with that at the moment. Do you get it? Like you can't just say in the multiverse, in a hypothetical, conditional, not speculative multiverse, this X, Y, Z.
Can't run with it because it's a proven fact.
It's not a proven fact,
Yeah,
but
so
it doesn't mean there's no evidence for it. Though.
No.
Okay,
Yes,
so it's not like you're either proven fact or zero evidence.
The
You can
multiverse,
have something
the multiverse
in
for me is like
between.
religion. Believe me.
Why do you say that?
Because basically, why do you not believe in religion?
Because I feel the evidence for it is
Okay, same
God,
thing with the
let's
multiverse.
speak to the creator.
okay.
Religion, we can.
You feel like the evidence for it is insufficient. It's lacking. It's not there.
Correct.
For a creator.
Okay, so
Yeah.
anyone can say the same thing about the multiverse.
Okay, so first off, let me address this point, okay? There's two ways to address this. First off, even if we don't know whether the multiverse exists or not, we can say that if there is a multiverse, what are the consequences of that?
No, we can't say that.
Why not?
I'll tell you why you can't say that. Now, because now you're moving from science to philosophy, and it has to be shown, yeah?
Okay,
The reason why you're moving from science to philosophy,
I'm not moving from science.
no,
to
you're
philosophy.
100% moving from science
Okay,
to philosophy.
no.
The reason, okay, how do you define science? Science depends upon tangible, empirical
Yes,
findings
yes,
in the known
agreed.
universe that we
Agreed.
can use our five
I agree,
senses
I agree, yeah.
to take through the scientific method. You've moved from this, and this is, I'm not accusing you of this, but
Yeah.
this is what a lot of people do,
Right.
like Richard Dawkins, etc. They
Yeah.
move from easily from science to philosophy to try and kind of slyly impose their view in the guise of a scientific argument. It's not a scientific argument.
is
Now
a
you're-
scientific
No, it's not. It's a philosophical argument. So you've moved from talking about the universe and its beginnings, which we can talk about here from a scientific perspective, to
Right.
talking about the multiverse. What I'm saying to you is, with the
You're
multiverse,
saying that's nothing to do with science?
yeah, it's absolutely nothing
Why
to do with
is it
science.
nothing to do with
because
science?
the multiverse is that which happens outside of the known universe, yeah?
No.
No, what do you mean no?
All right, let me try and explain.
Explain
Let me
to
try
how
and
the-
explain.
Explain to me how.
Okay, I'll
the
explain to you
multiverse
how
is
I
not
think you're
something
wrong.
that happens outside of the known universe.
Okay, all right. So first off,
Stop talking about gravity, man.
First off-
Gravitons are outside of the universe.
Okay, let him explain.
I'll try and explain. No, hang on.
Am I wrong?
No.
Okay, well, let me try and explain. Let me try and explain, right?
Good.
So, first off, I think what you're saying is that
Yeah, go on.
the multiverse is not science because these other universes are outside of our observable universe.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily matter because there may be traces of the existence of the multiverse in our universe.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then it is legitimate science.
Okay, you said once again, the operational word you used there is might be, isn't it?
Yes, and let me try and qualify
So unless
that.
you can
let me
get
expand
there
on that.
is,
So
then
first
we can't
off,
talk.
so then we can ask the question, well, is there any evidence of this multiverse that we can observe in our current universe? Okay.
What do you consider
And-
evidence, just to ask you?
Okay. Well, if a theory makes a prediction and then we go and get data that matches that theory, then I would say that's evidence
So
of that
flat
theory.
Earth theory that this man believes in, that's
Why are you
fair
saying
enough as evidence.
completely wrong? I'm saying I was talking about the whole concept.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Let's not-
Sorry.
Just for example,
I think the evidence for a flat Earth is not good, and the evidence
No, but
for
you just-
for
the
an
way you
Earth that's a
the
bit
way
more
you
like a
define
sphere
evidence-
is
Seems quite good to
good.
him.
the way you've defined
It
evidence.
is good to him.
And
It's
he has-
not good
and he
to
has
me.
maybe some good-
Right,
Stay
it's
on the
not
topic,
good.
stay on the topic.
Okay, I think let's stay on the topic,
No,
right?
because I'm just. The
Okay.
reason why it's
So
important
let
to
me-
define
so
terms.
that's-
Why are we defining evidence is that?
Well,
Because-
how do you define evidence then?
Okay, for me,
This is how science defines evidence.
how does science define evidence?
We think that a theory is likely to be true, or it has evidence in its favour if it makes predictions for experiments, and then we do the experiment, and
Yeah.
an experiment returns data that is exactly
So
what
you're
the theory
talking now about
says.
the scientific
Yes.
definition of evidence.
Yes.
Okay, let's run with that for now.
Okay. So
Let's-
let me try and explain
go ahead, yeah.
without
Of course.
right
Take your
what
time.
the evidence is.
Go on.
So when we look at the Big Bang, okay, we see that there are a number of problems with the Big Bang theory. Okay. And these can all be solved if you introduce something called inflation to the Big Bang, which is a hypothesized very rapid growth spurt for the early universe. Now, inflation makes a number of predictions for the statistical properties of the cosmic microwave background, which is the earliest light that we can see.
Okay.
And I interviewed the guy that was the cosmologist who gave the press conference for the European Space Agency's Planck probe, which is a $1 billion satellite that made the most accurate maps of this radiation. Okay, and I asked him, does your satellite provide evidence for this theory of inflation? Okay, and the answer he gave was yes, it does. And I'll give you an example. There's a number, I won't go into the technical details, but there's this number called NS, and the inflation theory predicts that you should observe NS to be 0.96. Okay, so when the satellite went and observed this, the observed value came back as 0.96. Okay, so we think therefore that the theory is somewhat confirmed. Now, of course, we would like more evidence.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, but so far the evidence has come back in favour of this theory.
What's your proposition? Like,
okay, let me finish it. Right now, this theory of inflation doesn't just predict these properties of the microwave background. It also predicts that our universe is part of a multiverse. Okay, and in particular, there's a form of the theory that's called eternal inflation, and we also
what's the evidence it provides in that respect?
Okay, so the version of the so how does inflation?
No. That's not my
So
question.
what was your question?
You're saying your theory predicts X, Y, Z, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So what we've unpacked is your evidences for the fact that, for example, there could be inflation, or your proposed understanding of inflation. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what you've shown the evidence for. Or, in this thing that, to be honest, it's over my head.
Okay.
It's 0.96 thing.
Well, we made a documentary. I suggest you watch it.
I'll watch it. But
watch Before the Big Bang, episode 4,
But I'm just
Eternal
saying-
Inflation of the Multiverse. Just Google Before the Big Bang Skydive Phil and you'll see it.
Yeah.
And
So-
you'll see the interviews with the scientists.
What I'm asking you
Yeah,
now is, what are the tangible evidences that you have of an existing multiverse, and why do you believe it's an existing multiverse?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that the multiverse exists. It might not exist, right? I'm saying is the evidence so far is certainly suggestive. It's not.
Can the evidence change?
And how many
Yes, of
how
course
many
it can.
universes would there be in the
Right,
multiverse?
I want to know why the Kalam argument is
It would be a very large number, possibly infinite.
No, hold on.
No,
Sorry.
see-
Now this is where you move really quickly from a scientific discussion to not only a kind of religious scientism that you've made up,
We
but a kind
haven't
of
just made this
vague
stuff
philosophy.
up. This is the mathematical
Hold on.
implication of the theory.
No, hold on, man. You've just said a big number,
Yes.
possibly infinite.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, there's a mathematical problem with using the word infinite.
Oh, what's the mathematical problem?
Okay, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of it. I mean, this is your field.
Go on.
I mean, you've heard the examples given by mathematicians of. Ali, tell them, man.
Well, basically, the infinite doesn't exist in the real world.
How do you know that?
It doesn't. No.
How do you know
no,
that?
How does it
Tell
exist?
them, Ali, man.
I don't know that it exists. I never said it does exist. I said it might. I don't know. You're the one that says it doesn't.
How does infinite exist?
I
No,
did.
what we're saying is, how does
Okay,
it
how
exist
would the multiverse be infinite? Is that what you're saying?
That's not. We're saying infinite doesn't exist in the real world.
How do you know that?
It doesn't. How? Can you show me the number infinite?
Phil, they don't really
can't.
know, but what they're basically saying is you can't have an actual infinite.
You can't say you don't know.
No,
we're
you-
asking a question here.
Because he's asked you and you can't respond.
Infinite doesn't. No, we did. We're asking a simple question. Does infinite exist in the real world? Where are you getting? You're seeing things, but we're saying where you get. Like for example, let me give you an example. If there's no. How can I give you an example?
Yeah, go on. Give us your proof. Mate.
Give
How
us
do you
an
know it
example that you
exists?
can-
Because it'll be a revolution.
Yes,
Hilbert
in
Hotel.
mathematics.
No, we just want to know.
Hold on. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you said that I can't tolerate that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because now you're using. Let me say why. Yeah, you're saying it's a revolution in mathematics. So who was Hilbert?
David. Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with the concept. I know what you're going to go with.
Excuse me. 'Cause
Yeah.
what you've done there is you've deceived the public.
No, I haven't.
No, you have.
No, can I tell you
No,
why?
you've deceived the public.
Go ahead. You
Let
go
him
ahead.
explain.
No,
I'll explain why.
Let me explain why you've deceived the
Yeah.
public. You know who David Hilbert was?
Yeah,
right?
I know who
Right,
David
fine.
Hilbert was, yeah.
What was his paradox?
It's not a paradox specifically.
What was
You're
his-
talking about the Hilbert Hotel.
Okay, what is it? Well, tell us about the Hilbert
Okay,
Hotel.
so the Hilbert Hotel basically says you can have an infinite number of guests in an infinitely big hotel.
No, that's not what. See, look, when it comes to advancing it, you've got to be ingenuous here, man.
I am being ingenuous.
No. Let me tell you how you'll be ingenuous, yeah?
Disingenuous, I think is what you meant.
No, I'm talking about ingenuity. This is how to be ingenuine,
Right.
not disingenuous.
Yeah.
All right, now this is a word in English. You can check it out in the dictionary.
I'm Scottish, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
I think it
All
means
right.
disingenuous.
I know
No.
what he's talking about.
Yeah, but
Hold
they
on.
talk about actual infinites.
Hilbert,
That's their
David Hilbert,
objection.
yeah?
Well, let's
Yes.
learn.
Okay, he was regarded, just because you quoted.
Yeah, he was a great mathematician, no question
not
about
only
it.
that, he was regarded as probably one of the best of his time. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Sure.
He
I agree
said,
with that,
and
yeah.
by the way, the majority of mathematicians today agree with David Hilbert. He said he gave the thing that he just kind of, swept by. The
Right.
hotel paradox is, he says that imagine in a hypothetical world you have a hotel which has an infinite amount of rooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do this slowly, not just brush these things aside. Imagine you have a hotel with an infinite amount of rooms, and then, you know what I'm saying, some people come in, some guests, they come in and they ask, can we be hosted in this hotel? Now the paradox is, if you say you've got infinity plus 1, that's a contradiction. So give us some more
No,
examples.
it's not. No, hang on, you're wrong. You've
Well,
misinterpreted it.
how is that misinterpreted?
No.
Go on.
First off, you've
It's a paradox.
misinterpreted what's going on here. Can I explain
Have
what
I
really is going
misinterpreted
on?
David Hilbert?
Yes.
Go on, tell me how.
Okay, so first off, right, there is this notion of a Hilbert hotel, okay? It's
what
not
is
the
it?
problem is not infinity plus 1.
What is it?
Because what happened was, in the history of mathematics, do you know who Georg Cantor was?
Canton.
Yeah.
I haven't read his works, but
Oh, so you don't know who he was?
No.
Okay, so basically, what Cantor showed, right, was that infinity is a perfectly well-defined concept in mathematics, but you don't treat it as a number because it's a set, it's not a number, okay? So the problems of the Hilbert Hotel arise when you treat infinity as a number. But,
this is
hang
the
on,
problem.
no, let me finish,
Nah,
let me finish,
no,
you've got to let me finish.
Okay,
You've got to let me finish
I'll
it,
let
right?
you
Okay, so Georg Cantor, right, presented a system of mathematics which has infinity in it as a perfectly well-defined concept. And mathematicians agree, there's no debate about this as far as I'm aware, that infinity is a perfectly well-defined concept in mathematics and is allowed in mathematics. Now what Hilbert said was, he said, and I went and I've researched this with another professional
Go ahead,
cosmologist. Okay?
I'm waiting for this.
The original quote from Hilbert that was used by William Lane Craig and has been used by Hamza Sorces because he copied William Lane Craig is that David Hilbert did say that infinity is nowhere to be found in nature.
Yeah, that's what
right?
we're saying.
Right? Now, that is a different question to, is it,
but we're
let me
talking
finish.
about science, though.
Let me tell
Science
you why
is
he
nature,
said
isn't
it.
it?
Let me tell you why he said it.
realm.
Okay, let me tell you why he said it. What his
go on.
justification for that
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Have you read the original paper that Hilbert said this in?
I read extracts of it.
Right, but you never read the whole
The whole
thing,
thing?
did you? I did.
Okay, go on.
Okay, and let
then
me tell
enlighten
you.
us, man. You're here to enlighten us.
Yeah, I'm going to. Right? Let me tell you what the full context of that statement
Go ahead,
was.
yeah.
Now, this was at a time that around about just during the First World War, Einstein had just proposed his general theory of relativity.
When was it?
1915.
I saw it was 1905.
That was a special theory. So
Okay, so
not the general
what are you talking
theory.
about?
The general theory.
The general theory, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hilbert actually tried to beat Einstein to the general theory of relativity, because Hilbert was a better mathematician than Einstein, right? There's no question about that, right? Einstein actually couldn't do some of the maths, and he went to a friend. His friend was called Marcel Grossman.
I'm with you.
And Grossman taught him the mathematics of what's called tensor calculus.
Yes.
And so Einstein managed to just beat Hilbert,
Yes.
But Hilbert was onto it as well,
Yes.
because Hilbert had gone to Einstein's lectures,
Yes.
and he was trying to beat him. But anyway,
Yes. Come back.
so what happened was, general relativity then showed you that there's a global topology for the universe, okay? And the universe can have different shapes, okay?
Yeah.
So the one shape is what's called a Euclidean flat universe, and according to Hilbert, this would be an infinitely big universe, right? And what he said was, Hilbert said was that Einstein had showed that the universe is not Euclidean, that it's curved. Okay, so this non-Euclidean space would prove, and Hilbert made the claim that this, because the universe is not flat, right? Therefore, the universe is not infinite, and therefore infinity does not exist in the universe. However,
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
he was wrong.
Why is he
okay?
wrong?
Why is he wrong?
Because at that point in time, in 1915, they couldn't measure the global topology of the universe. Okay.
Wait a minute.
What's the-
Now I'm starting to. So are you proposing a reinvention of the Einsteinian model that we have?
No, not at all.
So
not
what
at
you-
all.
what are you
The
saying?
Einsteinian model allows for all different geometries.
Okay, so what
you
you
have
propo-
to
what you
actually
propose-
go and do
No, but hold on.
observations to see which is the correct geometry.
What's your proposition here?
Okay, so my proposition is that Hilbert said that he thought the universe was not Euclidean because general relativity does allow for, of course, not only allows, I mean, it implies that there is local curvature in the universe. However, the global structure of the universe is different to the local structure. Okay, so you have to do measurements of a cosmic microwave background to see whether it's consistent with a Euclidean geometry or a non-Euclidean geometry. Okay, and that couldn't be done at that time in the life of Hilbert.
Can I
So
ask
he
you a
made
question?
an assumption, right? Now,
Now, let me ask you a
see,
question.
no, let me finish because I'm
No, but
almost done.
to be
I'm almost
honest-
done.
To be honest with you, like you've been
Right?
speaking for about 10 minutes.
Okay, hang on.
I
I
but
haven't
listen,
got
you
to
can
the
play it
point.
back, listen to
Let
it,
me
let
just
him finish.
get the punchline.
Finish it off,
Let me
and
just get the
then- yeah,
punchline. So what happened was, in the 21st century, it was finally possible to make these measurements. Okay, and the measurements came back that the geometry was Euclidean, and so therefore Hilbert was wrong, and therefore his statement that infinity does not exist in reality, which is, by the way, not a statement for mathematics,
but let me tell you
right?
something.
It's been disproved.
And hold on. Now you've got to be now receiving, yeah.
Yep, I'm listening.
I think there's so many issues with what you said, yeah, on a philosophical level.
Yeah.
If you think about it on a philosophical level, the existence of mathematical concepts in the real world itself is a questionable thing. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. If you look back in the Aristotelian time, with Plato in particular, and I'm going to come forward to the Enlightenment.
Sure.
Plato in particular, in the Aristotelian time,
Yeah.
or at time of Aristotle, obviously, like they were contemporaries. He invented what you call the land or the world of forms. Yeah?
Yeah.
The reason why is he invented that world because he saw that there's certain concepts, like mathematics, numbers,
Yes.
that basically had to, in his world, they had to exist, right? So he said that if they're used in argumentation, if we're using it in logic, they have to exist in the real world. So numbers are something which we cannot empirically, from a Plato perspective, we cannot empirically prove, right? So in other words, numbers don't exist. Maths doesn't exist.
Sorry, according to Plato?
Yeah.
No, that's not what Plato
Wait, hold
said.
on, hold on.
Historically, that's
No, I
not
haven't
correct.
finished. I haven't finished. They don't exist in this world. They exist in the world of forms, yeah. And which is why. Do you agree with that? Yeah.
He agreed. He said
so
that
the
they
world of
exist in the
forms.
world of forms.
Thank you very
yes,
much. I'm
but
not
that doesn't
saying-
mean they don't exist in this world.
No. He had his.
He didn't say
He had
that.
his special world of
He
forms.
yes, he
Let
said
me
that,
continue, please.
yes.
Yeah. Of course, I've just made that clear. Yeah. So number one, point one, Plato said that in the world of forms, numbers exist.
Yes.
Point two. This is where it gets interesting, more interesting, yeah? You might think this is an outdated, Greek idea. What are these people talking about? No. Kant and, what do you call him? Bertrand Russell.
Yeah.
By the way, and Frege as well, yeah? Bertrand Russell, he tried to propose at one point, and you know this, yeah? That logic and mathematics were the same thing, yeah? And the reason why he did that was because he wanted to show that mathematics has an empirical root. It's imperative.
I don't think that's right.
Hold on. That's he did. You can read his stuff.
I have.
Now, him and Frege both came to the conclusion thereafter that was based on a false understanding of mathematics. So he retracted that. Immanuel Kant, in his books that he wrote, also in the Enlightenment, more than one book, he says mathematics is not something that exists in the real world, but it's something we impose onto the world. In sum, my friend, for you to stand here, well, not in this vicinity.
For you to sit here.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Let me correct you on that.
Yes, you got me. For you to stand here, my friend. For you to sit here, right?
Yeah.
And to say that infinity exists in the real world.
I know I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said you
No,
can't
no.
rule out its existence.
No. Now you're
I
saying.
didn't say it did
Okay,
exist.
no. Hold on.
No, but
hold on.
that's just.
No.
Am I right?
No, that's correct. Yeah.
No.
I didn't say it
Fine.
did exist. I said
Okay.
it might exist.
So okay, you say the same thing.
You
about
were the one that said it couldn't exist, and I said
No. Hold on. Let me just make this clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you see that on a philosophical? Can you see my argument? That on a philosophical level, it's impossible for you to sit here, right, and to say that infinity exists in the real world, since you cannot even prove that maths exists in the real world.
Okay.
Or my question would be, if that is not the case, do what Bertrand Russell couldn't do what Immanuel Kant couldn't do what Frege couldn't do what Plato couldn't do, and tell us how maths exists in the real world. Go
Okay,
ahead.
right. First off, this debate about whether mathematics is a human invention or whether it exists in the Platonic forms is completely and utterly irrelevant to the discussion.
You're talking about infinity, it's a mathematical concept.
Right, hang on. The reason that it's irrelevant is because the claim that Hilbert made, well, all I'm saying is the claim that Hilbert made is invalid, okay? And the reason
You
that
can't say it's invalid. You can't make that claim.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't make that claim.
Why can I not make that claim?
You're saying it's invalid. For you to say it's invalid, you have to have a thorough scientific means of falsifying it. You have no way of falsifying that the universe, the statement that the universe is not infinite. You have no way of falsifying
I don't need to. I'll explain why.
That's how science works.
I'll explain why.
That's how science works.
No,
Going against
okay. No, I'm not. You are misunderstanding.
Well, tell me, you're going against.
First off, if I say that the evidence points to a conclusion, and then we show that evidence did not point to that conclusion, I don't have to prove that the opposite is true. Okay? All I can say is your inference was invalid.
No, but you're saying it's invalid.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying, so let me clarify.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think what you think I'm saying
Go on.
is that I've proven that the universe is infinitely big. Okay?
Well, no, I'm not saying that.
Let me finish.
Go ahead,
Let me finish
sorry,
because I think
go
you're
on.
misinterpreting
Go on, tell me what you're saying.
I'm saying.
Tell me what you're saying. Go on.
What I'm saying is, if you say, right, that, let's put it this way, let's suppose that I say that because that camera is red, therefore, I know, I'm going to come to that. Therefore, the sun will die, right? Now, you might say the colour of that camera has got nothing to do with the fate of the sun, but you don't even have to go that far. You can simply point out that the camera isn't red, that the camera is black, right? So you don't even have to even get into the whole debate about whether the colour of the camera affects the fate of the sun.
So go ahead and tell me what your point is.
So what my point is that what Hilbert said was that you could show that the universe wasn't infinite by showing that it's not Euclidean, right? Now that I agree with, right? That is true. But what he said was that we had shown that the universe was not Euclidean.
Okay,
now,
fine, even that's the case,
what we've done now, what's
anything.
happened in the 21st century is that we've shown that the measurements that we can make are consistent with the universe being... Let me finish.
Phil, please.
Let me finish. Seriously,
Seriously,
right. You've got to let me finish, right?
Should we stand up, guys? Should we stand up?
No, right? Seriously, let me finish, right?
Sitting down like getting pins and needles and that.
So, what we can say is that the evidence that Hilbert brought to the table to say that the universe was finite, is not valid. Now, that doesn't prove that the universe is infinite,
but Philip,
right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that his so-called proof of a finite universe doesn't work.
Okay, my point here is good. So you're saying you don't know whether the universe is infinite or not?
I just want to know this infinite exists.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, I'm really happy you said that. So what is the point of discussing something which you don't know the answer to?
Okay, I will tell you why, because we'll get back to the original point, which we've distracted from for like half an hour.
And what's wrong with the Kalam?
The point is, because you started off this discussion, talking about infinity, all these kind of things. You said that you have evidence against the Kalam argument. So this was what was told to us,
Yes.
So the first point I made to you is that the Kalam argument is not necessarily at the fore of protecting Islam or our theology. In fact, a lot of the Kalam arguments are non-Islamic arguments made by Thomas Aquinas or whatever. First point. Second point is, even despite this reality, you've come forward now and you've said, okay, I have my proofs.
No, I never said a proof. Ever. Don't
Okay,
put
fine,
words
sorry,
into
I
my mouth.
apologize. I abrogate what I just said now. I was saying that you've got
Okay.
your reasons, and you've given your reasons, yeah?
Yeah.
So you've given the fact that the universe is not in your opinion, non-Euclidean, and therefore infinity could
It's
exist.
not my opinion.
Yeah, okay, fine. It's fine.
It's
fine.
the measurements
Right,
that we
right.
have made.
No, it's an opinion.
No.
It's an opinion based on observable data, yeah? Okay, fine. So having said that, I'm saying fine. So the furthest philosophically you can go is say, look, I don't know,
Yes.
in your opinion,
Yes.
whether the universe is infinite or
Yes.
not. I can say to you,
Yes.
look,
Yes.
the presupposition that the universe is, can contain infinity is itself non-substantiated by the fact, as I've said before, philosophically, that numbers themselves are not part of the real world, and there's no one that has ever been able to.
This is irrelevant.
solve
This is completely
Why
irrelevant.
is it irrelevant?
I'll
Look,
tell you why.
No, hold on, sorry, Philip. This is not irrelevant. If I said to you, look, the number one exists, guys, are you with me? Yeah. If I say the number one exists, yeah, okay, exists in what context? If I say it exists as a mathematical construct, as an abstract construct, then okay, there might be some agreement here. But if I say number one exists as a real thing, yeah, that must mean from an empirical perspective that I can smell it, touch it, feel it, hear it, or taste it. Now, I can't touch one, I can't feel it, I can't do any of that stuff with number one. So if I can't even prove, and this is a big philosophical thing, that Plato, Immanuel Kant, Bertrand Russell, etc., none of these guys have been able to, Frege, and others have not been able to solve. If I can't even prove that the number one exists in the real world, then how am I going to prove that infinity exists in the real world? So if you can't even prove that mathematics exists in the real world, you're completely at loss when you attempt to try and prove something which is a secondary problem for mathematicians. Some mathematicians say infinity doesn't even exist as a mathematical construct.
Yeah.
So having said that, and we talked about some of them anyways, we're not going to go into that. So having said that, all your argument, no, Philip, all your argument is based on here. Your argument is genuinely based on absolute speculation.
Okay,
and it has no, you have basically no evidence whatsoever today.
Right, okay, let me respond.
Can we stand now? Because my
Can we stand here?
You want to stand? Okay, so first off, right, this debate, it's true that there's a debate in mathematics about the nature of numbers. Are they human inventions, or do they exist in some Platonic form? This debate is completely and utterly irrelevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
Well, please don't interrupt. I will explain why.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah? Okay.
I apologize.
I can't explain it if you keep interrupting me.
I do apologize.
Right. Okay. The reason that it's irrelevant is because we don't need to know whether numbers are human inventions or whether they have some Platonic form in their own right. So, for example, if I want to know how many bottles of water do I have, right? I just need to go, I've got one and another one, there's two. I don't need to debate what is the nature of numbers, are they human inventions or not?
Now you're straw manning this philosophy.
I'm not straw manning, it's irrelevant. Your argument is irrelevant to the question.
No, but he's speaking and he's not allowing me to interject.
Okay, let me finish.
He's
You haven't let me
cosmology.
finish.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
Right.
I'll let you finish.
So you debate him if you think he's
So
wrong.
if we're trying to debate, right,
Well, you debate him
whether
if you
or
think so.
not there's a multiverse, right? Let's suppose we're trying to debate, are there other solar systems?
Yeah.
Okay, what do we need to do to debate whether there are other solar systems or not? We need to find evidence of planets orbiting other stars. Okay,
Yeah.
do we need to debate the nature of mathematics to do that?
Philip,
No,
please.
we don't.
Please, Philip.
This is irrelevant.
What you're telling
this
you're
is completely
Philip,
and
if you allow me,
irrelevant.
to speak, please, yeah.
Okay.
What you're doing now is
Yeah.
one of the logical fallacies that everyone knows, even without knowing anything about logic, which is you're falsely dictating the terms of the debate. What you're doing is you're saying,
No, you are.
no, excuse me, let me tell you how you're doing that. This is irrelevant, this is relevant. Who decides what's irrelevant and relevant? Why are you deciding what's relevant or irrelevant? What I'm saying to you on a fundamental level is that if you cannot, and by the way, the example he gave was refuted by Bertrand Russell himself. When he came back to his, because that's exactly what he said. He said if you got, I can't remember what he used as an object. Because the idea is, he said that you got one apple or two apples, you're counting apples, yeah? So these are tangible things and he said you can count them. this is what Immanuel Kant and others said. No, it's not that we can see two things together. It's that we are superimposing a mathematical construct onto the tangibles. Not that the tangibles are giving us an idea of maths. So if that's the case, then your analogy is a flawed one that's been refuted by the philosophers that you've quoted. Having said that, we say now, if you're talking about infinity in the real world, which is a natural thing, and you can't even prove that numbers exist in the real world, no philosopher in the history of philosophy has been able to prove that numbers are a real thing existing in our realm, and you're coming here talking to me about infinity being part of our cosmological environment as an actual scientific reality which requires empiricism. That's a contradiction.
Okay,
and now if you're saying to me this is irrelevant, then what you've done to yourself is you've shot yourself in the foot and you've stabbed yourself in the debate, and what you've said is that just believe. That's what you'd expect from a believer like me, my friend. Not from an atheist like you who requires an evidence. I think you should throw in the towel before it's too late, my friend.
Okay, let me explain why I'm not going to throw in the towel.
Throw the towel.
Because first off, you've misinterpreted Bertrand Russell, okay? What Russell was trying to do, and what you've completely failed in your understanding of Russell.
I think you should throw the towel,
right?
seriously.
Yeah, you want to keep saying stuff like that, and you can do a good entertaining show for the crowd, but you're not actually progressing the debate, are you?
I think you should
You can put on your clown show if you want, right? But I don't think anyone's going to be impressed with the level of your intellectual rigor, right? What Bertrand Russell was trying to do was trying to establish whether mathematics could be perfectly self-contained system, okay? And that is
No, that's not
yes,
it.
it is.
No, it's not.
You should look up Gödel and what Russell was trying to do.
What should I look up about Gödel?
Gödel showed that what Russell's objective of trying to create a perfectly self-contained mathematical system was flawed. Okay, so that is what Bertrand Russell.
You're talking about Kurt Gödel, yeah?
Yes.
In what? In his incompleteness theorem?
Yes.
No, that's not. Nothing to do with that. What are you talking about?
It's nothing to do with the work of Bertrand Russell.
No. What you've just mentioned, I don't understand. You're trying to put things together which have no relevance.
No, they are relevant.
But
What I'm saying
Gödel's
is
theory, incompleteness theory.
Yes.
He had two incompleteness theorems which he wrote in Venice, yeah?
Okay, it's really important which city he wrote them in.
No.
Yeah, but go ahead and show off how much you know about Gödel.
No, because you've mentioned the name, and you said you go and read him, so I'm showing you that I've read him before.
Right.
So because if you're going to say that you should go and read Gödel, and I'll tell you what city he's in, that indicates to you as an interlocutor that actually I've read him before. And so you should treat me as an equal and not as a lower.
But you're not presenting.
So,
you're
okay,
not presenting what Russell.
That's point one.
You're not presenting what Russell said properly.
That's the reason why I mentioned Venice. That's the reason why I mentioned Venice. Number two, now I'm telling you as an interlocutor that you're someone of knowledge. You've obviously done your research. No problem. But what you're saying is not exactly what's being said by those philosophers. Gödel's incompleteness theorem was something that he had as a mathematician. It's a thesis that he had against set theory generally.
It's not against set theory.
Okay, well he was showing
No.
inconsistency.
No.
Hold on, excuse me. Anyone can do their research.
Yeah,
I'm
go
saying,
ahead.
Look, anyone can do their research. Gödel was talking about incomplete set theory particularly, but it had impacts on mathematics generally. So here we have Gödel, but we're not talking about Gödel. I'm not here talking about Kurt Gödel and
You're
other
talking
mathematicians.
about Russell.
I'm talking about.
And you're saying that Russell.
Your point is. My point is this. We agree here. So far, there's agreement. We don't actually. The funny thing is, we're talking and we're discussing and we're, all this, but here there's actually agreement. We both agree that you can't prove that maths exists in the real world. We both agree that you can't prove that infinity exists in the real world. We both agree that
Right, but where we disagree is
Where
that
do we
you've
disagree?
proved what you.
Where do we disagree?
Where we disagree
Where do we
is
disagree?
that you have proven, or there is a proof, I should
Go
say,
on.
sorry, that infinity cannot exist in the real world, and that statement is false. Okay.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, it is what you said.
No. This is what
All
I'm
right,
saying.
fine.
No,
Okay.
what was I
So
saying?
you
Go on.
agree that it is possible? at
No.
least?
I'm saying that from our perspective, as people, like, for example, look, you have to understand where we're coming from, yeah?
Yeah.
We have a different epistemological route to truth to you do, yeah?
Okay.
Our epistemological route to truth requires, you could say, actually is beyond deduction. Because it depends on what your true standard is, yeah? Deduction, a deductive argument, a syllogism, if you will, yeah? Is A, B equals C, yeah? Therefore C. We've got that to offer. The Kalam Cosmological argument is that, yeah?
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
but none of the assumptions that are presented
fine,
in the
that's fine.
Kalam, right, we know to be
No, I'm
true.
saying that, but what-
okay, and you've given. Now, let me interrupt for a
No,
second.
but
because
I
you're
haven't
getting the
finished.
conversation.
I haven't
off the
finished.
point. All right,
Let me
finish that,
let
and
me
I will
finish
get
it.
back.
What
to
I'm saying is, look, yes, we have deduction to offer.
Yeah.
Every deductive argument or every syllogism that's ever going to be made is going to require premises and things which lead from premises which are derived from the existential experience that we have, the empirical reality that we have. And since the empirical reality itself is called into question many times, and science itself is not completely perfect, from that perspective, anything can be questioned. Any argument you make or any argument I make. My position today is not to tell you, look, believe the Kalam Cosmological argument, believe the premise and what comes and follows from the premise, and therefore become a Muslim.
Right.
This is not it's not what I'm taking you. It's not the route I'm taking you. I'm saying this is one thing we have to offer, but we also have probabilistic reasoning. We also have what we call inherent reasoning. Yeah, all of these reasonings form a full argument from a Muslim perspective.
Okay.
Do you get it? So from this perspective, look, what I'm saying is that what you have to argue against, you basically have to guess in order to argue. You have no solid, and this is what subhanallah, I'll tell you one thing, yeah? Subhanallah means glory be to God.
You're only going to tell me one thing.
Now, I'll tell you what the Quran says, because it's interesting. Let me tell you this. It says, أَمْ خُلِقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُ. Was it? Were they created from themselves? Chapter 52, verse 35, yeah? Or were they themselves the creators? أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created from nothing, or were themselves the creators, yeah? أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ.
False dichotomy.
Well, hold on, it's not a false dichotomy.
It is a false dichotomy.
Well, we'll talk about it in a second. False dichotomy. And by the way, it's not even a dichotomy, because there's a third option. أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Yeah? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? In other words, were they themselves that did something allow for the universe to be created? بَلْ لَا يُقِنُونَ. Certainly they have no certainty. Absolutely.
Why do we need certainty?
There you go. What you're doing by saying that is you're confirming the Quranic statement. You have no idea of what you believe in.
Okay.
You don't know. You have no evidence of what you believe in.
That's
you're
not
standing
true.
here.
That's false.
You have no
That's
evidence.
just false.
No.
Okay, so
You
let
have no solid
me
evidence.
respond. Let me
Go on,
respond.
yeah.
Please don't interrupt me.
Okay, can I finish off one more line?
Okay.
So I don't feel like I need to, yeah? What I'm saying is not that you don't have no evidence. Everyone's truth standard is, look, everyone has some evidence for anything, but I'm just saying that we have evidence that the earth is flat. Yeah? And this man can be happy, the flat earth guy, whatever his name is. Where is he? I don't know, he's run away now. But he believes the earth is flat. Now he's got evidence the earth is flat. He's got his own evidence. But what we're saying is that, look, you have no definitive evidence which can lead you to certain truth. Now what I'm saying to you is, and that's what the Quran is saying, those who deny God's existence, those who deny the creatorship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that God actually is the one who created the universe, will always have an argument which is based on a presupposition which itself cannot be substantiated. And I tell you now, I dare and challenge you in front of all of these people to find me one piece of evidence which can be said to be certain truth, which goes against the thesis of God and goes against the main arguments that we have against God. That's my challenge. Otherwise, you can say, look, you can be the same thing. You can say the same thing about infinity. Say, we don't know if it exists or not in the real world. Say at least the same thing about God. Be an agnostic today. Don't say we're an atheist. Say, okay, in that case, we don't know if this creator, this entity outside the universe exists or not.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, can I respond without interruption?
No interruption.
Go on.
Okay.
I'm keeping an eye on you.
All right, so first off, I agree we don't have certain knowledge. Okay, but so what? We don't need certain knowledge. Like, if you get on an aeroplane, are you certain that plane isn't going to crash? No, you're not. But do you get on it anyway? Of course you do, because the evidence is that it's reliable. Okay, and you use reliability as your benchmark, not certainty. You're right, we don't have certainty. There might be a God. I'm not saying there definitely is no God.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I don't say that.
Respect,
okay.
respect to you, my friend.
Thank you. Right. Right.
Now we're going to go get something to eat.
All right.
You know.
Okay.
We're not done yet.
But
right.
we ain't done yet.
Yeah, we have to get him
right.
convinced of that.
Okay. Right. But that doesn't matter, because the benchmark is not certainty. The benchmark is evidence. Do we have sufficient evidence to say certain statements are true?
Yes.
Or do we have some statements to say they're at least, some evidence for something to be true? Now, what's happened, what we're debating here is this argument called the Kalam Cosmological argument, okay? And the argument has been made, right, that the universe began to exist, and the gentleman here quoted 3 different reasons for saying that it exists. One was Big Bang cosmology, where we showed that is false, okay? The Big Bang cosmology does not point to the universe.
I haven't said that. By the way, that was my argument, just to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right. Even if you did and other Muslims
No, but you said
have.
this gentleman, so I have to be fair.
I think you did, but if I
didn't mention it.
If I misremembered,
It's on camera, I didn't say
okay.
anything
If I
about Big Bang.
misremembered, I apologise. Other Muslim apologists have.
It's on camera anyways. Yeah.
Other Muslim apologists have, right? And so have Christian apologists.
I'm not even a Muslim apologist.
Okay. All right.
I'm here educate the people with it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that is false. We've also had the suggestion that the second law of thermodynamics proves the universe has a beginning.
No, I didn't even say that.
Yes,
I asked you about it.
Okay. Well, I'm answering you. Okay. First off, the assumption for the second law, right, would assume the universe has to be finite, but we don't know whether it's finite. So if the universe is infinite, then that argument is invalid. Okay, so we cannot say that this proves the universe has a beginning, because it's quite possible that the universe is infinite. We don't know, it may or may not be, but the fact that we don't know means that the argument cannot proceed to its conclusion. There also may be dynamical reasons. First off, the second law is a statistical law.
Okay.
It's not like the Newtonian laws,
Right.
i.e. there's a probability for it to be true and the probability is overwhelming.
Yes.
However, if you wait a long enough time, then of course you can violate the second law, right? There also might be dynamical processes.
How can you
that's well, I'll explain in a second, right? There may be dynamical processes that set the universe into a low entropy point. So if, for example, in loop quantum gravity, this is exactly what happens, because there's a contracting universe before the Big Bang, the entropy of the previous universe is trapped on the horizon, it doesn't go through into the expanding universe, and therefore the entropy would effectively be reset. It wouldn't actually be a violation of the second law, you're just describing things in a different way in this quantum gravity perspective. So the second law argument does not work. The cosmology argument doesn't work. The argument has been made that you cannot have infinity, you cannot, in the real world. We said that Hilbert made this argument, it was based on a false assumption. Furthermore, what we've learned about, I interviewed Sir Roger Penrose, who is one of the constructors of the Penrose-Hawkins singularity theorems, and he said you can have an infinite past because what we've learned, that the old ancient philosophers did not know, was that time is different in relativity than in our everyday lives. And there can be particles that experience all moments of time at once. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Hang on, let me just finish.
Yeah,
let me just finish. Right?
Is there time limits or something?
Okay, we can make a time limit if you want.
but first,
let me finish and then we'll do that. Yeah. Okay. So
you're gonna give me time, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
After
right. Well, let's do like 3 minutes each or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
3
Right.
minutes is nice.
Okay. So.
Like a boxing round.
Yeah. Okay. We should do a dance off. Okay. So what Penrose said was that for massless particles, they don't feel the passage of time. So energy can actually transverse the infinite. This statement that something can transverse the infinite is assuming a passage of time that's like our normal experience of the world. What Penrose says is that this is false, that massless particles can do so, and therefore that argument is invalid too. Okay, so we're not saying that we know the universe is eternal in the past. We don't know that, right? But we don't know that it had a beginning either. And the arguments that supposedly prove it has a beginning are not valid arguments. And the last point to make is, even if the universe did have a beginning, you can't necessarily say that it has a cause, because causes that we understand and we know in our everyday world, they exist in time. Okay, but you're trying to. But if there was a beginning to the universe, then there wasn't any time before the beginning of the universe, because time is part of the universe. That's what we learn when we study relativity.
Hold on.
Therefore, you are not in a position to say that causality.
It's going to end now.
Yes, I'm just about to finish. Therefore, we're not in a position to say that causality would necessarily apply if the universe had a beginning.
No, but can I tell you something? That last comment that you made about time.
Is it 3 minutes? 3 minutes now?
Should we do 3 minutes?
Let's do 3 minutes.
No.
No.
I'm going to have like 7 minutes, and then you can have 3 minutes. Because you just had like 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, but so did you before. So did you before. And your man here agrees with that.
Are you sure about that?
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
Okay, 4
Right, 4 minutes each.
Okay.
Ready, go.
Okay, listen to me, guys.
I'll leave it to you.
Let me tell you something. Yeah.
He's on the camera.
Generally, what you said. Let me just start with the end. Yeah. What you said about time generally
Last one.
is unsubstantiated, because what you have to understand is that, first of all, in philosophy, you have 2 theories of time. You have the A theory of time. You have the it's A theory of time and B theory of time. This is not a scientific discussion. Why? And this is what you keep doing. You keep involving philosophy as if it's science. You're dressing up a philosophical argument in scientific guise. That's disingenuous. Before the universe, you didn't have the systems that we know. We couldn't empirically analyze the universe as it or what's outside the universe. Therefore, to speculate whether there was time or no time is something which we cannot actually do. You're saying that time under Big Bang cosmology, time must have began at the time of the Big Bang. That doesn't necessarily follow. You can say that the time that we're acquainted with today, whereby we use the laws of physics to determine what time it is, began at the time of Big Bang cosmology, began at the time of the Big Bang. That's a statement you can make. But to say that no time began before the Big Bang took place, if it did take place in the way that we've been told it took place, in that sense, that's a statement you cannot actually make. And by the way, from an Islamic perspective, we believe in time before the universe, just to let you know. We believe that there was time before the universe. How this took effect, this we say Allah only knows best. Now that's point 2. Point number 3, which is more important now, you're saying that, and you've admitted quite, I would say bravely, and I applaud you for admitting this, that you don't know, you don't really know, and I really do applaud you for that, because I think that's intellectual humility, and that's also intellectual humbleness, and also it's a genuine thing to say. If this the case, yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just told my best
2
friend,
minutes to go.
I did. 2 minutes. That's cool. Since you don't know, I would implore you to think about one thing. Yeah. Me and you actually agree that on a philosophical level. Gary, one second. We'll talk a little later. On a philosophical level, that we can criticize almost every idea. But my point to you is that me and you, yes, we don't employ a deductive reasoning on every single thing. In fact, what we tend to employ, and you would probably agree with me, is a probabilistic type reasoning. So you said yourself, we trace things on reliability. So for example, you said, I probably know I'm here because it's reliable. I go into the plane because and I have trust in the plane that it's not going to crash because I trust in the reliability of the plane. In other words, what you have in your mind working either on an unconscious level or on a conscious level is a probabilistic type reasoning, whereby you go on the plane thinking, you know what, I'm probably not going to crash, that's why I'm going to take this risk. I say, in order to employ a genuine approach with the real world, why not we take the same approach where you're using a probabilistic type reasoning and employ it with theology. I say to you today, and this is a different argument, I didn't even propound a cosmological argument today. I didn't even make it. And just on camera, I've never said, you know, this. Today I didn't make that argument. Today I will make an argument today. And it's not the cosmological argument, since you've mentioned, and we both agree, hopefully, that
30 seconds, make it quick.
That probability is good, is a way that we come to truth. In that case, since all of the cosmologists almost consensually agree that the universe has fine-tuning, does this not imply that it has intelligence behind it? And if not, why not?
Okay, all right, so very quickly,
4 minutes, go.
Okay, first off, you said that I said the time began with the Big Bang. I didn't say that. I said if the universe began at the Big Bang. Okay. Okay, then there was no before. Now, of course, you can posit that there was a before the Big Bang, but then the universe continues to exist before the Big Bang, and the Big Bang is not the beginning. But the whole argument made by the Kalamists is that the Big Bang is the beginning. Okay, so therefore this is invalid reasoning. Yeah, either the Big Bang was the beginning, in which case you can't say that cause and effect is still operating. I mean, you could speculate that it is, but that's speculation, right? Or you say the Big Bang was not the beginning, in which case the universe may be eternal into the past, and the Kalam argument is invalid. So bottom line is about the Kalam argument, it's an invalid argument because we don't know if any of the premises are true. We don't know whether the universe began to exist, it may or it may not have, and we don't know that causality would operate if time really had a beginning. Okay, so that is a rubbish argument, don't buy it. Right, now on to fine-tuning, right? First off, you said that fine-tuning implies a designer, right? I say no, it doesn't, right? First off,
that's an
intelligence. Okay, so it doesn't do that. We've got plenty of examples of things that people have pointed out to be fine-tuned, and we can show that actually there's a perfectly natural explanation for them. So let me give you an example. This is an example that has been quoted by William Lane Craig, by Hamza Sources, by many theologians. They said the expansion rate of the early universe was fine-tuned to 60 decimal places. Okay, so that statement, and so therefore there must be an intelligent designer who put that number in just right.
Yeah.
Okay, now it turns out that that number, that fine-tuning, right, depends on gravity always being attractive. Okay, however, what evidence from cosmology shows is that there was an early period of inflationary expansion to the universe, and we do have empirical evidence for this. I'm not saying it's overwhelming evidence, but I think it's quite strong. Okay, and you can watch our films where we explain what that evidence is. Okay, now what that does is it turns the equations upside down.
Yes.
Right. So where the evidence is, where the evidence is that if inflation did happen, then in fact that number does not need to be fine-tuned. Right. So we now have a natural explanation for this that doesn't imply any intelligent designer at all. Okay, so this statement that if something we see to be fine-tuned implies a designer, okay, that statement is false. I mean, we have evidence that statement is false. I'll give you another example. Okay, it was thought that the distance from the Earth to the Sun had to be perfectly fine-tuned. If it was a bit further away, then the Earth would be too cold, if it was a bit too warm, and so life could only exist if the position of the Earth had to be very delicately fine-tuned. Okay, again, we found out that that argument was invalid. We found that out in two independent ways, not just with one way. One way was we found there was another way to heat a planetary body via gravitational force. So for example, planetary bodies like Enceladus, like Europa, that are outside of the so-called habitable zone, they actually can be habitable because the water can be heated by tidal forces. Second off, we've also found that there is, how many?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. We've also found that there's an enormous number of planets out there. Okay? And therefore, you don't need to fine-tune the location because there's so many planets. It's basically like saying, I've won the lottery, it's incredibly improbable. Well, it could be that an intelligent person fixed the lottery, or it could be, simpler explanation, there were lots of lottery tickets sold.
Okay, I'm sorry to say, Phil, right? Okay. In your rebuttal, if you want to call it, or attempt to refute my points, you actually fumbled upon a series of logical fallacies that any onlooker with a just mind would have also realized. Number one, you said we don't know. Yeah? As you said, the reason why we shouldn't take the cosmological argument as a valid argument is because the premises are unfounded, right? So, okay, we don't know if the premises are true. The lack of knowledge of something is not invalidation of the thing. That's a very well-known logical thing. So, for example, if I don't know something, does that mean it doesn't exist? Okay, that's point number one. So you're saying our lack of knowledge of something, or our lack of certain knowledge of something, is tantamount to us rejecting that thing. We should reject that thing. Yes, it's an invalid argument. It's an invalid argument. Why? Because we don't know if the premises are true. Just because we're not certain of the premise being true, does that mean we should completely get rid of it? I'll tell you something. If that's the case, you should employ the same reasoning with mathematics. We don't know that mathematics is in the real world for certain, but are we going to say that we reject mathematics? We don't know and cannot prove certainly that rationality itself is something we can prove, unless you use rationality, in which case you're going to be using a circular argument, which again is a logical fallacy. Are you going to here be logically consistent and say that we're going to reject rationality? No, you're not. But what you're doing is you're using selective critique of certain arguments you don't want to believe in for whatever reason, for whatever predisposed reason that you have, or for whatever psychological reason you have, and you're disregarding other things. So in other words, we won't accept the cosmological argument because we don't know if this premise is certainly true, but what on the other hand we will do is we will accept mathematics, having the same criticism can be made of mathematics. We will accept science, even though the same criticism can be made of science. We will accept rationality, even though rationality, the same criticism can be made of rationality. That's called hypocrisy in discussion. Point one. Point two, you talked about the fine-tuning as if you've actually caricatured the fine-tuning, as if those who refer to it, people like your friend Stephen Hawkins, who you sat with and you had an interview with, and you filmed him, your friend, the disabled one, him, when you discussed it in his own book, A Brief History of Time, he mentioned fine-tuning, and he or any of the cosmologists, when they refer to the fine-tuning, they don't refer to the planetary bodies and the heating of the planet Earth. No. Martin Rees in his book, Just Six Numbers, and others, they refer to the laws of physics. Had they been different by decimal numbers, decimal points, the universe itself wouldn't be allowed or couldn't bear human life or any life. No life would be able to be in the universe. It's nothing to do with the planet Earth. So you've caricatured, you've made a straw man called the fine-tuning argument, which actually is nothing to do with the fine-tuning argument. You've slapped it down in front of everyone to make it seem like you've slapped down the argument. But what you've actually done is you've just slapped down something which no one invented anyways. No one was referring to that kind of fine-tuning. Point number 3. You mentioned that even in your trying to slap down the straw man, you didn't do a good job. Why? Because you said that the fact that we can see that there are other ways to heat a planet. Who cares if there are other ways to heat a planet? We're not talking, even when we're talking about the planetary example of the planet Earth, that there are other ways to heat a planet. It doesn't matter if there are other ways to heat a planet. If the planet is in a certain position, respective to other planets and respective to the sun, and that position is a very delicate position. Had it been different, in a different position, then it would have been destroyed, too hot, too cold. Anyone can understand that. That's a different argument. We're saying that the planet itself is in a good position, but that's not the fine-tuning argument. So you have to now refute the points of fine-tuning.
Okay, right, so you made 3 arguments. You said, one, that if we're not certain, I'm inconsistently using certainty. Okay, the criteria is not certainty. I'm not saying we dismiss the Kalam because we're not certain that the assumptions are true. I'm saying we don't even have any good evidence that they're true. I'm happy to go with non-certainty. Okay, now don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Okay, now give me an extra 10 seconds. Right, bonus time because you interrupted me. Right. Okay, so we're not looking for certainty. So you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying, or straw manning me. I never said certainty. What we're saying is the evidence good enough to point to the conclusion? And with cosmology, we don't, it's not the question we're not certain the universe began to exist, is that we really just don't know. The evidence is not there at all. We only know there was some type of Big Bang event. We don't know the true nature of this event. We don't know whether it was the beginning of time or not. Therefore, the cosmological argument is not just a question of a lack of certainty, it's a lack of any evidence at all for what happened in the Planck era. So that argument, you've mischaracterized what I'm saying. Second point, you said I've mischaracterized the fine-tuning because I only talked about the planets, right? But I didn't just talk about the planets. I gave an example of the expansion rate of the early universe. Okay, which you completely ignored. What I was trying to show was that there were people claiming fine-tunings, and you can show that they don't necessarily point to an intelligent creator. Okay, and I gave you not just the planets, I gave you the example of the expansion rate of the early universe. So in your rebuttal, you should address that. Okay, there are other things that people have addressed. So for example, people have said the rate of inflation in the early universe. This is different to the claimed expansion because that's the flatness problem. So flatness is addressed by inflation, and people have said, oh, inflation needs fine-tuning, okay? Or people have said, but yet again, in loop quantum gravity, you can show that inflation does not need fine-tuning, okay? So again, these statements are model-dependent statements, and really what you're saying is that in your model there's fine-tuning, but that's just a flaw in your model. That doesn't tell you there's an intelligent creator, okay? Another example, there's people who've made the claim that the strength of the, how long?
2 minutes.
Okay, people have made the claim that the strength of the strong force is perfectly fine-tuned, right? Now, again, other people have claimed no, that you could change the strong force, okay, and you could have a wide range of values for that. And so therefore, again, you're assuming this fine-tuning is some kind of fact, but it isn't. Of course, you can't confirm, you cannot do an experiment where you change the value of a constant and observe whether the universe actually has life in it. And you can show, if I gave you the standard laws of physics and the values of all the constants, and I asked you to predict whether there would be life in it, you would not get the answer right. You cannot derive that from the laws of physics that we know them, okay? So, secondly, right, so obviously we want to talk about the multiverse, because if there's a multiverse, fine-tuning is gone, right? Now, the multiverse stems from inflation in cosmology, which we do have some evidence for, right? Inflation predicted NS equals 0.96. We observed it to be 0.96. It predicts the cosmic microwave background is Gaussian, it's adiabatic, that there are super horizon correlations. I don't have time to explain all these terms, but the fact is, you can go on NASA's WMAP website and they say we have found evidence for inflation. You can watch our film where we speak to the head guy on the Planck satellite, and he said not only do we have evidence for inflation, but we have evidence for multiverse, because the type of inflation that's favoured by Planck data points to a multiverse. Moreover, Stephen Weinberg predicted that there would be a cosmological constant on the back of a multiverse, and sure enough, that is exactly what we found. So we've made predictions. Okay, I'm not saying it's certain, it may or may not exist, we don't know, but you can't say there's no evidence for it. There's certainly more evidence for that than there is for God.
Okay, 8 seconds left. That's good. Right.
Okay, I'm really happy with this, because he started off by saying something which is embarrassing. I'm sorry, man. I'm really sorry, but because you're an intelligent person, and you know that, you know, I'm you know.
Get on with it. You just.
No, I'm gonna use my time.
Let him.
I'm gonna have 5 seconds bonus time. All right, because you're an intelligent person. Allow me to be a bit, you know, flamboyant here. Point being, you started off by saying there's no evidence for the fine tuning, for the cosmological argument. You have to understand here that the premise of the cosmological argument is in fact something you can't find evidence against, and I'll challenge you. In fact, the premise of the cosmological argument is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now what I want you to do here is show me a range of things that begin to exist in our known universe without cause. Okay, if you're saying that there's no evidence, then the statement shouldn't make sense in any context. The statement shouldn't even make any sense. But that's a false thing to actually claim. It's embarrassing that you've actually claimed that. Point number 2. You talked about the expansion of the early universe, as if, once again, miscategorizing the fine-tuning argument to, or specifying it to one thing, which is the expansion of the early universe. The fine-tuning argument has absolutely nothing to do with that. It can exist completely independent of the expansion of the universe. It can exist in a model of the universe which is not even expanding, and that is what Martin Rees wrote in his book, Just 6 Numbers. His 6 numbers that he talked about, and I want you to refute this in your rebuttal, the 6 numbers that he talked about were constants that are actually governing the laws of physics. Or there are 6 numbers that are basically, I don't know how many digits there are, but they're basically the laws of physics as we know them. Had these numbers been just a little bit different, then the universe would not be able to maintain or have any kind of life, not just human life, any kind of life. That's the fine-tuning argument. We're not talking about the aesthetics of the universe, how beautiful it looks. We're not talking about how warm planet Earth is. We're not talking about the expansions of the early universe. We are talking about the fact that the universe is intelligently designed. It must be intelligently designed in such a way as to even allow atheist people like Richard Dawkins and Stephen Hawkins, your friend, to actually admit that it's fine-tuning. Fine-tuning itself has a connotation of it must have been finely tuned. Having said this, I want you to now, in your rebuttal, explain to the rest of the audience members here today that actually the fine-tuning doesn't exist and it couldn't exist. Because if you do say that, then you will be going against what seems to me like a cosmological consensus among the physicists. Most of the physicists have come to this conclusion, even atheist ones. Now you're coming non-specialized in the field, trying to challenge the consensus and say, no, it's not actually fine-tuning. That is disingenuous not only to yourself, but also to your atheist counterparts who decided to disagree with you. Now, this is the argument today. If you do agree with the probability type reasoning, then the fine-tuning argument, as an argument to indicate that the fine-tuning of the universe is actually a fine-tuning which necessitates an intelligence, that argument should be like a hand in a glove. It should fit like a hand in a glove. You should look at the universe around you just by your naked eye and come to a complete conclusion that the universe, being finely tuned as it is, necessitates an intelligent designer. And if you don't do that, then you've got to tell me of one example of something even remotely as complex as the universe. And before you ask, complex means things that have different parts all in one place. Something that is as complex of the universe, having having the intelligence, having no intelligence behind it. You've got to tell me now of anything in the known universe which is even remotely as closely, finely tuned as the universe, which has no intelligence behind it. Go ahead and tell us.
Okay, so first off, he said I have, on the Kalam Cosmological argument, he says I haven't presented any evidence that the assumptions of the argument are false, but I don't need to. You don't need to prove that the assumptions are false. You only need to show that there's no evidence that they're true. So for example, if I want to get someone off on a murder trial, I don't have to prove that my defendant didn't do it. I only have to show that the evidence that he did do it is no good. And then I can dismiss the case. So I can dismiss the Kalam cosmological argument without proving that any of the things are false. I only need to show that you haven't proved that they're true. And I have shown that. So with the fine-tuning argument, he said that the expansion rate of the early universe was nothing to do with the fine-tuning argument. That is complete nonsense. I encourage you, go and watch debates that theologians have done where they've quoted the fine-tuning argument. This is actually the most quoted example of fine-tuning. Now, the point being that if you can show that you've got an example of fine-tuning and it doesn't necessarily imply an intelligent designer, that it has a natural explanation, then you cannot infer fine-tuning implies designer. You ask for one example of some this is fine-tuned to 60 decimal places, okay? That's the claim. But we have a completely natural explanation for that. You can show that in inflationary cosmology, the fine-tuning completely goes away. So you wanted one example, there's your example. The fine-tuning of the expansion rate of the early universe, which has been used by many theologians, like Muslims like Hamza Sorsis, Adam Dean, they've all used these examples, okay? William Lane Craig used it because of course they all copy William Lane Craig and didn't know it, right? And so this is one of the most quoted examples of fine-tuning, okay? So it's certainly the case that we do have an example of fine-tuning that doesn't require an intelligent creator. So this idea that you can infer fine-tuning, therefore intelligent design, no, you cannot. Right? Second off, you say it's a complete consensus that there is fine-tuning. That's not true. There are a lot of cosmologists, you are right, that say there's fine-tuning. But what you failed to mention is there are a lot of cosmologists who say no, there isn't. Okay? Including some of the cosmologists that these guys quote. I interviewed Alan Guth, one of the world's leading cosmologists, and he says, I don't buy fine-tuning. I don't think there is fine-tuning, except one case. He did say he thinks the cosmological constant is fine-tuned. Right? He did say that. However, you can read in Nature, very well-known established physicists like Carlo Rovelli, Eugene Bianchi, they say Don Page, who's actually a Christian, right? This guy's a theist, and he doesn't think the cosmological constant is fine-tuned. So there's a lot more doubt about this fine-tuning than you pretend. Yes, I agree, there are people like Martin Rees who say there's fine-tuning, and I'm not going to dispute that for a second, but the bottom line is, you cannot actually, way we decide these differences in science is do experiments, okay? But you cannot do an experiment where you change the constant of nature and see if life comes about. There are plenty of cosmologists who say you can change these constants and life will still come about, okay? We don't know. Now, even if there is fine-tuning, right, we do have a good explanation for fine-tuning. As I say, if there's a multiverse, you've got a perfectly reasonable explanation for fine-tuning. Now, I'm not going to claim we know there's a multiverse, but we do have some evidence. It's not overwhelming evidence, I don't want to claim that it is, but there is some evidence for a multiverse in this form of inflationary cosmology. And if you don't believe me, you can watch our videos and we interview some of the world's leading cosmologists, and they say, and observational cosmologists, not just theoretical ones, and they will tell you what the observational evidence is.
15 seconds. Okay,
so the facts are, if you have something improbable, you could conclude that someone is fixing things, but you could also conclude you have to be able to have a range of probabilities. In a universe, you don't know what the probabilistic range is, so you don't know, you can't make that argument.
Now
you still want to carry on 4 minutes each?
Yeah, we'll do a couple more.
No, can you not just like talk, because this is like,
let me finish, 4 minutes.
All right, 3 minutes each.
Yeah, make it 2.
But it means we don't interrupt each other.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so what do you want, 2 or 3?
Free.
Okay, ready, go.
Let me tell you something, right? In the beginning, he said, he quoted some names. I can't remember who the first name you quoted was, but you quoted a name and then you said, they don't believe in fine-tuning, and then you said, except for this situation, or except for the cosmological constant.
Yeah.
So it seems
Alan Guth.
Alan Guth, yeah?
And Stephen Weinberg, I believe,
Okay,
is the same.
so
I
it's
think.
really interesting.
Yeah.
It's incredibly interesting here that you attempt to refute the fine-tuning with people who actually accept it, especially in certain cases. So you have not found really, even in your refutation of me, and you're someone who's meant to have interviewed all the, the majority of.
No, I haven't.
I don't know, a lot of them.
Some
On the way.
You've not even found. Okay, this is the thing. The expansion rate of the universe, I told you before that I'm not resting my case on that. I'm resting my case just in this instance. Let's talk about the 6 numbers. Then you said, okay, I don't deny the 6 numbers. Therefore, I win the argument. It's finished. It's as simple as that. If I say the 6 numbers of Martin Rees constitute fine-tuning, and you have no refutation of that, forget about me. The argument has been won by one side, and that's how you just have to be humble and admit it. Forget about the. Pardon?
Carry on.
Yeah, number 2, with the cosmological argument, and we'll come as well after this, after he finishes. With the cosmological argument, you said that it's completely solved with multiverse. As you rightly pointed out yourself, multiverse is completely speculative. You could say as speculative, more speculative than some religious beliefs, fine. But what I'm going to say is even more than this. Actually, it's not solved with the multiverse. You have to say it's only solved in a situation whereby you not only have a multiverse, but you have a possibility or reality of an infinite amount of multiverses. So we have to believe in 2 things without seeing them and knowing them. You have to believe in the multiverse, and then you have to believe in a multiverse that has an infinite amount of universes in them. Now, even if you do that, you haven't solved the problem of fine-tuning. Why? Because you'd have to change the question that you put into the total probability generator, because in maths there's different kinds of probability, like Bayes theory, total probability. We're using total probability, which is part of probability theory in maths. You would have to change the question you ask the calculator from, to what extent is this universe finely tuned, to what extent is a universe finely tuned. In other words, changing the question from the indefinite article, from a definite article, to the indefinite. So you'd have to actually not only have a million or billion, or not even an infinite amount of universes, you'd have to change the question you're asking as well. So in essence, even if you had the multiverse, and even if you had an infinite amount of universes, this doesn't even disprove fine tuning.
Okay. So right, to respond, right, first off, he said I said the multiverse disproves the cosmological argument. No, I said it disproves the fine-tuning argument. So let's get it straight. Second off, he said that because I quoted people like Alan Guth who don't believe in fine-tuning apart from one example, and the fact that they agree with that example means that I've been refuted. Absolutely not. The point is there's no consensus on this stuff. Right? Yes, Guth agrees cosmological constant is fine-tuned. Actually, I should say only if the cosmological constant is the vacuum, okay? Which cosmological constant may not be the vacuum. And he even gave that qualification, if you've seen that interview.
I've seen it.
Right, well maybe you should.
I'll watch it. You keep advertising your
Skydive Phil before the Big Bang. Right? Because he said if
subscribe to my channel on YouTube.
If the cosmological constant is if the cosmological constant is okay, come on.
Sorry.
I'm getting bonus time. Right. If the cosmological constant is the vacuum energy density, then it's finely tuned. But of course, this is what Carlo Rovelli is saying. Well, maybe the cosmological constant is not the vacuum energy density, and then it's not fine-tuned. Right? So there isn't this consensus. There are and it's not just the early expansion rate of the early universe.
6 numbers.
Like the strength of the strong force.
6 numbers, all 6 numbers.
Yeah, the strength of the strong force. Not agreed upon. Sean Carroll, another cosmologist, said he doesn't believe in fine-tuning. Roger Penrose says he doesn't believe in fine-tuning. Okay, he does. Right. Okay. Can you not keep interrupting me? Sorry. I want bonus time. Right. So now Penrose does say that the entropy of the early universe is fine-tuned, but not fine-tuned for life. This is the difference. Okay, because the entropy of the early universe could be enormously higher, and it would still allow for life. Okay, so theism would not explain why the entropy of the universe is low. And why this has been taken out of context is because when people have quoted Penrose, let's say the entropy of the universe is fine-tuned, what he's saying is that he thinks this is evidence of a cyclic universe, because there would be a mechanism that sets the entropy into a low state. Now, you're saying that the multiverse would not, even if it exists, wouldn't disprove fine-tuning because it's about the indefinite article. But what you're missing out is the selection effect, right? You are only going to find yourself in a universe that can support life. You can't find yourself in a universe that doesn't support life because you're alive. So therefore, your argument about the indefinite article is invalid.
30
Okay?
seconds.
So the fact is, you said the multiverse is completely speculation. That is utter, total bullshit, right? We have evidence for inflation, and we have evidence that inflation happened and inflation predicts a multiverse. Okay, that's not me saying that, that's what NASA and ESA say.
10
Okay,
seconds.
so therefore we have evidence. Now again, I'm not saying that this evidence is overwhelming, that inflation has been definitely proved, and that therefore if multiverse has been definitely proved. I'm not saying that, but it is not complete speculation either. There is some evidence for it.
Stop.
Can I have
do you
1
want to
minute?
do 1 minute each?
1 minute.
As
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
One
Do you know
minute
what?
each.
1 minute.
I'll
each.
just do 1 minute. No, that's your final thing, isn't it?
That's his channel. Yeah, that's his channel.
Nice try.
No,
Well, if you're wrapping up, I get to wrap
Yeah,
up.
1 minute. 1 minute each.
1 minute each.
Go, you go ahead first. 1 minute.
No,
each.
you go ahead first, because
Okay,
I was the
you go.
last person to speak.
That's cool.
Ready,
No
go.
problem. Thank
1
you very
minute.
much.
Whoa,
Thank you
sorry.
very
Hang on,
much.
wait.
All right, okay.
Sorry. Wait. 1 second, Mohammad.
Sounds like we
Okay, 1 minute. Wrap up. Go
Okay,
ahead.
listen. It seems like my major argument today, I've only put one argument forward. I wasn't necessarily propounding the cosmological argument, but I was defending it from certain things that he was saying which I believe are unsubstantiated. I don't believe the cosmological argument itself, in and of itself, as a standalone thing, should be used too much in the da'wah. We should have a basket of different kinds of arguments we use it. As it relates to the fine-tuning argument, which I put as a supplement, or as the main argument today actually, you have to remember, I talked about, as a main argument, the work of Martin Rees, the 6 numbers. He has not been able to refute the fact that there are 6 numbers that detail the natural environment from a physics perspective,
15.
which had they been different, the universe would not be finely tuned for
10.
human life. And therefore, if you can do it now. If not, we have to admit that actually you have no answer.
Okay.
All right, 1 minute. Go for it.
First off, he quoted Martin Rees. What he forgot to mention, he's misquoting Martin Rees, because Martin Rees is saying that we've got evidence for a multiverse, and he thinks that's the solution to the fine-tuning. So even though Rees thinks there is fine-tuning, right, you're forgetting the fact that he thinks there's evidence for a multiverse. So he doesn't think that's God, and you conveniently ignored
I don't say
that.
anything about God.
Can you not interrupt me? Can I get 10 seconds extra?
No, but I have to-
you interrupt me, 10 seconds extra.
Stop.
That's
Right.
good.
1, 2, go.
Okay, right.
I think
Okay,
I'll do it.
so first off, right, just because Martin Rees says it, there are other cosmologists that don't agree. And the point about science is you have to confirm things by experiment. You cannot experimentally confirm that these constants have to be fine-tuned. Even if they are fine-tuned, right, it doesn't necessarily prove God. It could be a multiverse,
20
or it
seconds.
could be something other than a multiverse. There are other solutions. People have proposed that the cosmological constants might vary throughout the universe, and we actually have seen some observational evidence in the form of
10.
alpha that this might be the case. Now, this evidence is tentative. I'm not saying it's anything definitive about it, but it certainly doesn't prove God. And one last thing, that even if it was fine-tuned, right, think of this. Why would a God need to fine-tune the constants of nature? Don't you think that God is going to create life via supernatural intervention anyway? So he doesn't need...
But it is possible.
Right? Okay. But what I'm saying is, if he's going to create life via supernatural intervention, he doesn't need to fine-tune the constants, does he?
There could be reasons that we don't know.
Right. But you get my point, right?
Anyway,
There's a
is that it?
theologian.
Time up, yeah?
Can I just make this one last
disagree,
point,
boys.
right? Just one thing I didn't mention.
Just let me
You
shake
can
your
get
hand
an
first.
extra time.
Let me shake your hand
Thank
first.
you, because it has been a
Thank you
good
very
debate.
much, man.
It has been a good debate.